Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing, the podcast for manufacturing leaders and professionals.
Designed for high impact on your way to work or unwind on your way home to gain clarity for tomorrow.
Step out of your comfort zone and discover new perspectives to add value, get results, and make a difference.
Yes, let's jump in.
Well, Dave and I have been talking a lot about getting stuff done. And in manufacturing, every hour is about getting something done, whether it's just getting that order out, getting that task completed, getting that inspection done. And you're dealing with so many great people because we are built on people. Maybe people outside of manufacturing don't see it that way, but when you've worked at, hey, everyone's making something, but there's different people and there's different approaches in how we do it. And one of the things that we know is that every person that works in a manufacturing organization is an engineer of some sort with an idea. And the ones that are really killing it usually are getting ideas from all over. And Dave and I are just talking about, some of our own ideas. And sometimes our ideas didn't always get implemented, Dave?
Yeah, and I've heard several times, just this week, it's been kind of funny how maybe themes just seem to resonate in our heads. But I've had like 3 different people say, I gave this idea, but they turned it down. They didn't listen to me. They said, yeah, we've tried that. And it's like all of a sudden, I'm hearing in my conversations with others in manufacturing and beyond about, seems to be a frustration level with folks, and they just roll over and give up. And I thought that would be an interesting topic for us to explore further. And it's certainly something that applies across the board.
And it's one of those characteristics or habits that when organizations figure that out and they can share that throughout their teams, well, things can really happen and get done. Now, if you have somebody like myself that I can remember, I would get it done. I wouldn't lay down. But then sometimes I would have some debris along the way of maybe the glass door that I walk through instead of opening the door and walking through it, just because I was driven to get it done. And that didn't make it right either, because, just basically trying to run through the glass door to get it done. That doesn't last. That's self-serving too. So there's this whole thing. And that's why we love to take it back to just, mindfulness is just more around just being present. And many times I can just think that I was already on the other side of the wall. I didn't care how I was going to get there. I was going to just push to get through it. But how do we stop, Dave, and just be present so you can see more? Because when we're running to that task, or if we've laid down because we're just frustrated because we're not getting it done, what do you do?
That's a great question. And I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is like, which side of the fence am I on? Am I on the side of, hey, I've gotten it done. Wait, where is everybody else? I've left them all behind. Or am I the one complaining that nobody seems to get it? Nobody listens to my ideas. My ideas get shut down. I mean, which player am I at any given time? And I think we find ourselves sometimes on both sides of that challenge. So, when I hear someone say, yeah, they shot my idea down, it's like, well, wait a minute. Number one, where was the other person? Where was their head when you presented this idea or you talked to them about that idea? Where were they? What were they going through at the time, in the moment? How many other things did they have going on when it was your priority to suggest this idea or make this recommendation, and you felt like perhaps you were blown off or ignored. But what did they have going on at the time? It's again, that the two-sided, the two sides of the coin here. Um, so the first thing is just, hey, what do they have going on? Is this the right time for me to be bringing something up, for me to be making a suggestion? And two, it's like, when's the last time that you rehearsed or thought, all right, I'm going to make this presentation of this thought, idea, or say, hey, let's try this. When's the last time you actually practiced that or rehearsed it with someone else to see how it came across? What are some of the key words, your approach in doing that? I mean, am I stroking on anything here, or am I just is it just chatter? I mean, to me, this is real stuff.
Well, we used to call it barfing on the table because I remember putting out some of my ideas in my very excited and to one of my leaders, and it was like the response was, "Don't make your problem my problem." And it was kind of like, what? But at the moment, but then after, it's kind of like, well, yeah, that was not a good time to bring that up.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of had my own personal thing that was going to make this great, and my leader had a lot going on at that point in time. And if I would have maybe rehearsed it with a coworker, and he would have said, "Well, do you really want to approach that subject right now? Let's talk that through." So great point, Dave. Yeah, just on the fact of, hey, if you are going to run something, if you do have this idea and you want to drive it forward, and if it's important to you, then is it worth having a conversation with a peer?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I have been, again, on both sides of this. I'm sure I have been accused many times of ideas, thoughts, recommendations falling on deaf ears. But, the flip side is, everybody's got the solution, right? Or the observation or the recommendation. But it's like they think their job is to throw it over the fence and let somebody else worry about implementing it, how much it's going to cost, the work that would be associated in doing so. And so, along with that idea, that thought or recommendation, or here's what we ought to do, doing a little homework and coming at it with some substance rather than, just again, throwing it over the fence. And it creating or causing someone else, then it becomes their problem and you walk away. And then your only accountability is, well, I told them about it one day, but they didn't listen. They don't listen. Well, why didn't they listen?
Yeah, that's a great, great trigger phrase. And well, tell me more. Let's dive into that. So yeah, when you hear a peer say that, or if you can catch yourself saying that, then it's like, oh, well, hold on a minute. What do I own in that? And let's think back to the context around how that idea was brought up.
Yeah, how it even came up in the first place. Too many times we have great ideas, no doubt. I mean, there's collective genius beyond our imagination, but too many folks want to throw the idea again, throw it over the fence, and now I'm done with it, right? And it doesn't work that way in the manufacturing world. You've got engineers, you've got the accountants and HR and purchasing, and I mean all these different functions. And for the folks on the front line, there are some things that are so obvious of some changes and opportunities that can be made, need to be made, but the lack of conversation with people, perhaps with trusted people, to really talk about its implementation and then be willing to be involved in its implementation. And again, just not throw that, I'll go ahead and say it, just not throw that turd out there and expect somebody else to pick it up. So manufacturing is a rough and tumble world, and everybody's got that idea, but I'm passionate about, man, don't say they didn't listen. There has to be a reason why they didn't listen. And unpacking that, getting to the point to where why didn't quote unquote they listen? There's something deeper there.
Yeah, I think of the production team coming up with ideas for the controls team on Logic. And it was like, yeah, we can think of 20 ideas for you guys to do. And they'll just shoot them off in an email. And it's like, well, I don't understand. Like, I came up with these good ideas and I just sent an email. So that kind of ties back to we're going to circle right back to the fact of, I wish I knew this before, but basically, the way our brains are hardwired, when we have a lot going on, when we feel tension and some of that cortisol starts to run through us, that prefrontal cortex protects us and how open and vulnerable we are. So if you want to have someone be in a creative mindset and you're just going to send them an email and say, hey, I need your help with this. Well, one, you're only getting 10% of the information because you're saying it through email. So you just lost out on that. So I think one of the first things is, Dave, how much of a different conversation is it when you're in person?
Man, it makes all the difference in the world, that face-to-face connection and past experience and working together. I mean, it's all about relationships.
Yeah. And one of the sayings I have heard is, relationships are the foundation of dialogue. So if all of a sudden you want stuff done and you haven't given, your teammates the time of day, then what have you invested? It's like a bank account. Have you put something into that to help others? Have you been mindful of how you're showing up, and is it take, or have you put some deposits in before you're trying to take some money out?
Yeah. We typically call it, or I've been used to calling that the love bank. You got to put a little bit in there. And if your love bank gets a little on the, if there's more withdrawals than deposits in that love bank, things start to get a little rocky.
Yeah. So I think just paying attention to your own emotions first and saying, okay, well, what's driving this? Why am I so excited about this? And have I thought this out clearly? So we'll just kind of, go back to the fact of, do you need to talk that through with someone? And then think about that other, who do you need help from? And what does that, how much love have you given that person?
Yeah.
As Dave said, and just those two things alone right there. You can just, if you got to stop listening to the podcast now and you just go in today and you think about a couple of those things, I'd love to hear if you got something done that maybe you didn't know how to get done the day before.
Yeah. That reminds me of something. I mean, oftentimes when we're floating around out there, and it doesn't matter what your role is or what your position is in a manufacturing environment or any organization for that fact, but when we're trying to engage other people, build relationships, get others to buy into an idea that I have, right? That you have. Those can often be difficult conversations because the idea may be, it may cost somebody, their time and their heart and effort, but because they can't see the end result on the other side. But it's something I've learned. I'm dying to share. Is just, recently in a difficult conversations, there's books out there on how to have, difficult conversations, but there's something I learned. And number one, and it kind of goes back to where we started. Is there a need right now for me to bring this up? Is the need really there?
Love
And
that.
if it is, then the second check or test would be, is this going to be something that, in bringing this conversation up now and having this conversation, is it going to encourage or make the person feel better about the current state? Right? I mean, 7 days, working 7 days, 14 straight days in a row, 12-hour shifts, or just implementing a new idea. How can you encourage that person in helping them see the big picture? And we've kind of covered that ground already. And then it's just, if it doesn't help build them up, if it doesn't, retain their dignity, don't have the conversation at that point, at that time. Maybe there's a more appropriate time to bring that idea up, to make that suggestion, because some people are just at the end of the ropes at times, to where it's not the time to have that conversation in which, let's get this idea on the table. No, bad idea. Stop, And so just remember, is it necessary now? Does it encourage what the environment is right now? Does it build it up, or does it tear it down? And then, in the way, I don't know, I'm going off on this. Sorry, Trevor, but it's just
Good.
At the end of the day, if people lose their dignity and self-respect out of the way this conversation goes down, it's not worth having at that time.
And this needs to happen by tomorrow.
Then you know what? Have the conversation and be conscious of what the effect is and what it's going to cost, and weigh the options out. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example to where it's like, we've got to get this machine, we've got to get this press in place now, today. All right. Well, if there's resistance on the other side on, nope, not happening, tried it, it's not going to work, then we can elevate things, we can raise Cain, we can, throw a fit, throw a temper tantrum, but stepping back and saying, all right, what is it? I mean, we've got to implement this today, Trevor. All right, then what is it that's on the other person's agenda? Where are they at? Where am I at? And how can this be presented, or we work through this, so that at the end of the day, we both may agree to disagree, but somebody's working that 13th hour in that shift, because it's happening.
Exactly. It's just getting the bigger picture out there, and we get into the finite thinking, right? It's the finite, it's this hour, it's, I want to go home, and I know I got to get this done, so I just got to kind of plow through this. But man, when I have someone come to me and say, hey, you know what? I know on the board it says this is due tomorrow, but here's something I've learned, and here's my plan, because I've really thought this out. Dude, if I got a leader that comes to me with that type of intention, it's going to be like, well, yeah, I'd rather have it take an extra day if you're going to do it that way, because I know that, for example, the controls guys will be behind it, because they know that you've done the homework on it. And we know that it's going to work because we took an extra time to get more feedback from the subject matter expert pulling the handles. And okay, you know what? I get it now. Well, it's not okay just to come back tomorrow with it not done. And it's not okay to bulldoze through it. So yeah. It takes a little bit of work, but it's like, if we can just step back, kind of just circle back again and say, okay, how emotionally wrapped up am I in this? And where are they at right now? And what's important? Is it important to the overall organization, or like you're saying, Dave, is it important to me? Because if it's all about me, then maybe I just need to not talk for a little bit and think that through, because it's got to be for the greater benefit of the organization.
Yeah, and and too many times in the heat of that moment, it's got to be done tomorrow. We lose our focus or ability to deliver a message, and the scenario is kind of like this. All right, hey Charlie, this has got to get done tomorrow. When's it going to happen? Versus, hey Charlie, with this needing to be done tomorrow, what's it going to take to make this happen? There's two different approaches. One is bringing the other person along with you versus putting them on the witness stand and making them defensive. Because I can tell you, in the first example in that scenario, Charlie's going to say, ain't got time for it, bro. Whereas in the second one, the response has to be, I don't know. And then that creates or sets the stage for the dialogue on the next steps. And so, our approach in that, again, when we get it's not going to happen, 90 times out of 100, I'm the guy that says, well, it's not the one who's resistant. It's not their problem. It's the way in which it was presented. It was brought up.
I love that Charlie example, Dave. And it's so true. And it just brings us back to, it's how we show up. Yeah. If you understand the fight or flight,
yeah,
and you say, well, Dave's expecting this to get done today, so when's it going to happen? Well, that's really encouraging. Wow, you've really got me motivated, dropping names to get this done. And that sounds like you're kind of almost threatening me. So
I'm digging my heels in and pulling on that rope, and I'll resist all the way, right?
Why do we need to talk about this on a podcast? Well, because it does happen, because that is the default and it's easier. And when you just say, this needs to happen when you get it done, that takes no vulnerability. That takes no humility whatsoever. And it takes no ownership to it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All three. And it happens every day, regardless of what level you are in the organization.
So I think the listeners have some good thoughts on, just try that. Just, and what else is great too, observe. Like, just see how are others approaching others for help? Who gets shit done and who doesn't?
Yep.
Pay attention to that. And if you're the one that seems like no one takes up your ideas, then that mirror is going to come in very handy.
Ooh. Oh, I hear you, man. I hear you.
And like you said in the beginning, Dave, when you can grab a partner, somebody you trust, maybe somebody that you see that gets stuff done, and then you say, hey, I really need to get this done. This is what I'm thinking, and just kind of role play that out. And one thing that will come out of that is confidence. If you've thought it through and people see that, man, you really have thought this through, you believe in this. This isn't an emotional thing. This isn't a checkbox. This is something that you care about, and you've taken the 30 seconds to explain the benefits to the organization and the fact of, I'm not going to have to redo this. Man, let's see what happens.
What would be the big takeaway, Trevor, for our listeners today, man? What do you think?
I think it's just that curiosity of, if I've had something that I've been wanting to get done and it seems like nobody's listening, dig deep and to figure out, why is that? And if you can't dig deep, then ask somebody else. And you got to ask somebody that's going to give you some honest feedback. Yeah. And that has the opportunity to see you in action and say, well, now that you ask me, because a lot of people won't come unsolicited, So my big takeaway today is that if we can walk in intentional tomorrow, check ourselves, take our own temperature of how are we showing up, how are our emotions, and figure out maybe what can be done different, and that you can do different, not somebody else. And you might find out that you can get a lot more stuff done. That's my takeaway.
Amen to that. Amen.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some good feedback on some different approaches. So please reach out to Dave and I if you got any thoughts on different topics and what's helpful and what's not. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
You take care.
Thanks for taking the time to join us today. How you show up matters.
We'd love for you to subscribe, share with a colleague, and tell us what you think.
Your feedback's important to provide this high-quality, powerful program that makes a difference in your life and others. Take care.
See you next time.